People who live down there can't live down there.
Yeah.
The other one you can
that-
sell
that-
for
that
black
whole
label.
little bit of-
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I have the one, they're both.
Well, yes.
Yeah, black chocolate.
He sold his house to,
5 minutes to make his or her remarks in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. The Board of Directors will not discuss or take action on any item that has not been posted to the agenda. And we've had people
I
say,
call point of order. I sent you an email telling you that you were supposed to have something on here where an agenda item where citizens could speak to, it was called a hearing. Remember the email I sent you? And I requested in this way that citizens who have issues with the appraisal district or who have questions about the way things are done can have a separate time that's not in citizens be heard. And it's required by the law. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, may I address that?
yes.
Thanks, sir.
Just for the record, my name is Jim Evans. I represent the Board of Directors in this matter. The Public Information Act does require the ability for a citizen to participate on any agenda item. However, an AG opinion from AG Paxton has said that that can be limited to a particular point during the meeting. And I think in interpreting the Paxton AG opinion, the communication about any agenda item can occur right here.
But this isn't under this is a requirement by appraisal district meetings themselves.
This is, in my
It's
opinion,
not, if I may, I'll get back to the floor. I'm looking for the email that I sent to Miss Austin.
I've seen that email.
And it's an email that addresses the statute in the Texas tax code that pertains particularly to appraisal board meetings.
My advice to the district is for the purposes of the Open Meetings Act section, I believe you're referring to, you are entitled to participate on any agenda item.
No, sir, I'm not.
May I finish?
Yes, sir.
You are entitled to discuss any agenda item at this point.
Yes, sir, but no, I'm not talking, I'm sorry to take up your time. I know it sounds petty, but this isn't, I'm not trying to be difficult, but there's another, and Michaela,
I've got, it's right here.
what's the code?
You said, current Texas, tax code, please see screenshot below. It is section 6.04, organization, meetings, and compensation. And it says a majority of the appraisal district board of directors constitutes a quorum in its first meeting shall elect from its members a chairman and a secretary. The board may meet at any time. Okay, here's your comment.
Yes, ma'am.
The board shall develop and implement policies that provide the public with reasonable opportunity to appear before the board to speak on any issue under the jurisdiction of the board. Reasonable time shall be provided during each board meeting for public comment or on appraisal district and appraisal review board policies and procedures. That's listed as your citizens to be heard time frame.
But that's a specific time period that you would allow. For that in particular, I think it allows a little bit more, because you guys can't hear individual complaints. I don't think it would harm you having a section in your public meetings that said, hey, we have a special section set aside here where if you have issues with the appraisal district or have questions, this is set aside for it. I think it would give taxpayers and people who are upset with the appraisal district a feeling like, hey, these people want to hear us. They've set aside a particular time in the agenda. And it's not like you have meetings but once a quarter, really.
So I understand what you're saying. However, I don't get how you're not seeing that that's item number 3, citizens to be heard. At this time, comments will be taken from the audience. You can talk about
I
anything
understand
you want.
that, but it's the wording, I'm talking about the wording of a particular agenda item that pertains to telling people that there is a time period within the citizens be heard doesn't mean anything. But I'll.
So you would like us just to readdress the wording on that?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if I'm sorry, my next thing is, like, we can talk about it today, but I don't believe y'all. I believe since you guys missed the September 15th deadline to have a public hearing and to have the different, entities receive the appraisal plans. I think y'all are out of the, I think this appraisal plan is null and void for the year. Because it strictly states that it's a time when you have to reauthorize the plan before September 15th. And there's a formality to do it. Y'all didn't do everything. It's not uncommon Galveston County's having the same thing. So I think he's here today to discuss my claim in particular. But what I want to use this time for is to tell you, we have been presented
Point of order, how much time are we talking about?
So 5 minutes,
5 minutes. 5 minutes. I want to, but this is part of the, I would imagine the public hearing, you're going to talk about it too. But I just want to say this. I like to look at this as an opportunity, not a hindrance to the appraisal district. You guys are here to do things. You guys want to be loved. You want to do what's right by the people. Y'all want the opportunities to make people's lives better and make government better. I think the situation that we've been presented here really will allow us to accomplish that if we don't look at it in terms of we have to do this because we have to do this. So I like to keep an open mind as we discuss this. And I like to give you this information. The gentleman here, I believe, is, oh, did I give you one piece of paper or more?
And staple.
I'm sorry, staple?
You want it back?
Oh, no. I didn't want that one back. I'm sorry. That'll make me nervous.
Very
We're all-
nervous.
Pass it now. These are just things when it comes to the public, pass it now, please. No, just one at a time. Great. These are the things that, like, when we come to the public hearing on it, that I think he has his tax code, his property tax code there, his book. But these are the ones that I think that pertain to us, you know, as we talk to it. Did you get one? I think there's two. No, one's for you and one for her.
They're different.
Are they different? Y'all go ahead and start and I'll figure it out.
What about me?
You're next.
I'll figure it out.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
Right, my name is Pamela, so I live in the same here in Wilson Rockport. I'm also a county commissioner for precinct 3. And I am here to question something that I came a year ago and questioned Mr. Soto about at that time. And he assured me that they would take a look at it when they reappraised property in 2023 on January 1st. A small correction was made, but certainly nothing that is what I would think you would recommend. This concerns Pearl Point, parts 1 and parts 2. In April, last month, we had Mark Gore and another gentleman who's not in the call right now come in and give us their annual report, as they're required to do because they received the tax incentive before I was on board. And they certified to us that they have invested $69,207,624 to build both phases of Pearl Point. And then they broke that down for us. And they said that the total investment in part 1 was approximately 44 million. And the balance was in part 2. The district has the part 1, 4.1, evaluated as 16 million. Even though last year I explained to Michael that the owners who come to court and verified that they invested 32 million. And now they're telling us that they put more than that in, over 40 million. And 4.2, the district has evaluated at 22 million. Even though the owners tell us that it has a value of approximately, I think, 38 million. Now, he did explain to me that they use an income model here. I did look through this appraisal plan that I think y'all are going to talk about today. But the income method is not the only way that property can be evaluated, appraised in this community or other communities. And I would just encourage you all to think about how you are doing it. I'm not necessarily trying to crucify the people who built Pearl Point, more power to them. It's successful and people live there and they like it, that's fine. But our community in Texas, what we should be getting, and that hurts all of us. That hurts the school district, hurts the county, hurts the city, it hurts the road and bridge fund. If we have the owners telling us that that property is worth about 43 million, and we're saying, no, it's only worth 16, there's a problem. I don't know where that problem is. I'm not on the appraisal district board. I don't want to get on it. But that is a problem. And if you're saying that 12.2 is worth 22 million, and they're telling us that it's at least 38 million, possibly more, that's another problem. Because even if we're giving them tax statements, they pay their tax this year. We paid them 80%, next year it goes to 70%. I think it's the same with the city and the school, I'm not exactly sure. We could be getting at least 20% or 30% of what the actual value is, rather than what it's appraised at. And if this one, which comes to my attention, like I said, it's in the precinct, and they have to make a report to court. I'm not going out, I'm not looking at all the property, I'm not trying to, like I said, put it to these developers. But it's important that we collect the taxes that are due in this community. And to give a poor appraisal is not a good way to do it. My finance are on them. So, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Item number 4, public hearing on the 2023 and 2024 reappraisal plan. You guys were all emailed out last week, the reappraisal plan. I would like to point out that, as Mr. Hutt pointed out, we did not hold the public hearing, and that was a fault on our end. However, this was the exact same board that was sitting back in September when the reappraisal plan did go out. Mr. Soto sent it out to you guys, I think, early last week. You had a chance to look at it. If anybody had any thoughts, we'll move that to the next agenda item. But right now, we have public hearing posted for the 2023 and 2024 reappraisal plan that was presented to us back in September.
I have some, I don't think this plan is valid, but I would like to make some suggestions into the plan in general.
But which is?
We're on item number
You're on
4,
public
public
hearing.
hearing. We're on the public hearing.
Okay, this one I do. All right. So these, here's,
Is this what you just handed
no,
out?
there's some different. These are changes that I suggest that we make to the appraisal plan. And these are changes that. And these are some of the things that I talked to you about before. And it is, I'll give you, so the first one. If a property owner is successful in an appeal protest against Aransas County CAD, the following year, their property will not be assessed. Now, so if you look down I have a correlating statute for you here. I assume the lawyer can say where this comes out of. But it says that if the law is this, if the appraised value of a property in a tax year is lowered, so if somebody comes in here and they protest and their tax value is lowered, the next year,
I think you mean market value.
the market value, I mean, okay, market
Tax
value.
value is not.
I know, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
The market value is lowered. The next year, Mr. Soto and the appraisal district
Yeah,
is not, the appraisal district is not supposed to appraise them
again,
using the same criteria.
appraisal is not the right terminology. Use the market.
May I
value.
just talk, like, you guys don't, I mean, you figure it out, I mean, you can figure it out, you know what I'm saying?
No, a lot of us don't.
Okay,
Market value.
so the market value, but he has to, what he says it's valued at has to have more, the burden of proof is greater than it is the first year. So they have to come back and they have to have different factors to prove it. So why don't we just let it lie? If you win one year, the next year you just don't get appraised. That's my number one change. My number two change is ACAD will automatically provide a copy of data schedules, formulas, and all information the chief appraiser will introduce at the hearing to establish any matter at an issue to a property owner once the formal protest has been filed. So right now, when you file a protest, you're not guaranteed under the statutes that you'll receive all of the information that the appraisal district will use in your ARB meeting. But if we can make it really easy and say, part of filing a formal protest means you're automatically given out that evidence packet, that would really help people. I can't tell you how many times I sat down next to people coming to protest their taxes. And I said, well, what does your evidence packet say? And they go, I didn't get one. They didn't know they could. Okay, my third change is property owners will be notified of any change in the appraisal roll, appraisal card that increases the amount of tax liability. Now, this is what's happened. Say in a year that I got assessed this year. On my appraisal card, I have a new building, like a 6x4 building, which is a temporary greenhouse we pull down. But however, that increased my tax liability, and it would have cost me more money if my appraisals went up because of that was added. I think that anytime you have a change in your appraisal card, if the square footage of your house decreases, if the category of your pool changes, if something changes that affects your tax liability, property owners should know. And the reason I say this is because the only way you can figure this out is to keep records each year of what you get mailed out, or go into the computer program and toggle between the different years to see the different improvements. That's the only way you know. Okay. So number 4. Now, these are all, I think, really, really reasonable. Okay, this one is a little bit different. Okay. ACAD will only appraise property during the same year once every 2 years when the comptroller's office performs a ratio study. I given 2 statutes there. It tells you appraisal district has to appraise every 3 years, and the comptroller has to run its ratio studies every 2 years. We could just appraise every other year when the comptroller runs their ratio studies on us. We wouldn't have to appraise every year. My last one, and number 5, is a really reasonable one, and I use Michaela Austin's property card as the example. And I'm sorry, it's pretty small, but number 5 is all descriptors used by ACAD to determine tax liability will be defined and have a description of what characters make up that descriptor. So, Michaela, you have a swimming pool here, and it's a swimming pool 6. You cannot look up, you're a teacher, you can't look up and you can't see a rubric that says a swimming pool 1 has these characteristics, a swimming pool 2. You have it on your homes, but you don't have it on that. So it would be nice for you, because all of these things count towards your tax liability, for you to be able to look up and say, is my pool actually a 6? No, it's not. These criteria make it a 1 or a 2 or a 3. We have that in the appraisal plan when it comes to like home sizes. You have categories 1, 2, 3, and then you have in the different sidings. But I don't think I think this would make everybody's job a little easier. Like I said, I don't think this reappraisal plan for this year, I don't think it's valid for this year, but these are changes that are easy to make. They'd improve lives, and it would actually think make less work for this office. You only have to appraise once every 2 years. That's it. Thank you, guys. I'd like those considered today.
I'm sure that address a couple of these.
Yes.
With regard to the suggestion that if the value is decreased by an ARV, that the subsequent year's value stay flat. I want to just point out what the tax code says, it's in chapter 23, that if there's an increase in the subsequent year after the value was lowered by a decision by the ARB or by a court decision or by chapter 41A arbitration, then the increase has to be supported by clear and convincing evidence. So the district is entitled to increase the value as long as it's supported by clear and convincing evidence. And there's a definition, I believe, I don't have time to look it up, but it's the kind of evidence that would provide a firm belief within reasonable minds that the facts are correct or that the opinions are correct. There could be some repercussions if the district just simply keeps the values flat for the subsequent year. One being in a volatile market where you've got market data that supports an increase. Since you're appraising property as of January 1st of each year, you're not simply looking at the previous year and saying, I think we're going to go up 10%. You look at the market data that was in place in the previous year and you go by that. So, and Aransas County is an insane market. It has been for a couple of years. So the district needs to consider the market value that comes from sales in this insane market. It comes from market rates, it comes from cost figures. Because the chief appraiser's job here is to appraise property at market value on January 1st. And if the I'm not even sure that the board of directors would be entitled to put that in the reappraisal plan, because it would run contrary to the requirement to appraise property at market value as of January 1st. It would also end up causing some problems potentially with the property value study, where if the controller says you messed up, this values in the sample. And why is it so low? Well, the reappraisal plan says we have to keep it where it is. Then the controller is going to say, well, we don't care. That's going to stay in the sample, and your school districts may end up having to suffer state value because of it. With regard to the suggestion that all of the information be provided to every property. If there are some people who didn't know that they're entitled to it, then that just means that they haven't read their notice of protest. Because in the notice of protest, there is a specific box that the taxpayer can check to require that information.
I'd like to add that as a result of the people a few years ago, people would say, I didn't know, or I didn't know that I needed to request. So we instituted a policy that and this started at least last year, if not 2 years ago, where we sent everybody the evidence, whether they requested it or not. And that's been at least 1 or 2 years. 2 years. Thank you, Amy. So in answer to your question, the conversation that Hutt referred to, Mr. Hutt said, I don't know how many times I've talked to people and they didn't have their evidence. That hasn't happened the last 2 years. I mean, at least 2 years ago. And so we're trying to be transparent in that way. Like, even if they didn't ask for the evidence, we're going to give them all the data comps, all the sales comps, all the equity comps. We're going to give them the ratio study, or within that neighborhood or that generalized geographic area. We're going to give them the pictometry imagery and a copy of the property card. So that's the evidence that we're going to present at that ARB hearing. And therefore, we're meeting that standard as far as I think.
Was this one item number 3?
That was item number 2.
And I'm not even sure that that's germane to a reappraisal. That's an appraisal review board issue that needs to be taken up with the ARB.
But you can put it in the plan. Put it in writing. Sorry.
Okay, I finished my remarks. I forgot what 3 is.
3 is right here too. Property owner will be notified of the change of appraisal rule. Again, I think you were referring to in number 3 and number 5. I think we're related in regard to, number 3 was specific to if any item was changed on your property, that I think Mr. Hutt's suggestion is that we would change, we would actually notify the property owner, say, not only did your property go up, but item number 4 on your property card changed from PC to MA because you enclosed it and air conditioned it. That's not part of the statute. I mean, it's not in the property tax code. All I'm required to do is tell them that their increase has happened year to year. And he did make a correct statement that, you know, if a person had a question, they could call the appraisal district from one year to the next and say, hey, listen, I have a copy of my property card here. Can you send me another copy of my property card associated with this year's appraisal? And I would be glad to do that. Or they could look online and they can see the change from one year to the next. But it's not part of the statute, and it's way down in the weeds as far as I'm concerned. It would, you know, as far as trying to track that internally, Damon, you want to?
We have, so our values are produced by our computer automated mass appraisal software in a way that is incredibly complicated. So the schedule or a chart, a table of where the values come from doesn't exist. They're actually on what's called a matrix of values. So there are something like 55 to 65,000.
When you say it doesn't exist,
It's not in any one place. It's
exists
all these different
in a
things that
computer
have to
model.
work together. That in the end produce a number that ends up saying this is where it lands on this schedule based on who knows how many adjustments. There are tax agents who will request from us exports of our entire CAMA software on a annual basis, or maybe they'll do it in January and then again later. And they receive that and they process that data
in a myriad of
in
ways.
any way that they want to. They usually get a line delimited file. For a regular property owner, it would be unmanageable, an unmanageable amount of raw data. And to understand what they're being given would take potentially years of training. So what the focus needs to be communication on a level that's actually relevant to a property owner. The inside of our database it's unintelligible to most people. So, but you can request it, and a property owner can request
They can.
whatever they want on their own property at any time.
And furthermore, they could request it, they can come in, property owner could come in and say, listen, I want every property card on my entire street from last year and this year. Actually, they can get it 5 years ago or whatever. And we're just gonna print out the data, we're just gonna hand it to them. And they can do their own analysis, and they can see that, oh, property owner 7, they changed from a porch to an MA on the back of their house. And how's that relevant to mine? They get to make that claim like maybe it is relevant or not relevant to their own market value. I'm meeting the statutory standard of telling them every year, and that's why we appraise we're gonna get to this point in just a minute, but that's why we appraise every year, is because our market is it moves so quickly that it's important to tell people every year that it's changed, that it's changed, that it's changed. Now, as far as the minutia of like every single detail, a person can look into the system. They can go onto their own website, our website, and see, oh, last year I had 2 porches, but this year I had 3. Is that right? Oh, yeah, I did add a porch. Oh, no, I didn't. I removed a porch. And then they get to bring that to our attention.
And to that comment as well, I mean, think about most of our communities on fixed incomes, correct? And so if you reappraise something every 2 years, and this year on average, they went up, what, 40%? Like they went
36,
30.
according to the paper.
Okay,
The paper was 32.
so imagine if
taxes.
the next year it went up to 64%. How does that affect a fixed income?
They would save money, Matt. They would have been able to save the money they paid on
They don't.
taxes this
But they
year.
don't, they spend it,
But
right? It's just one of those things, I get
But
it,
I,
I
I love your faith in people. Okay, so here we go.
stimulate people.
On my appraisal card, the year before I bought my property, I had 1.5 acres of wetlands. When I got my appraisal, when I got my new appraisal card for the first time, my wetlands had dropped down to 0.3%. Now, that ended up and when I came in, I protested that because I was like, how can your wetlands decrease? I got my wetlands put back up to where they were. My assessed value on its own dropped $20,000 on my land. And I'm savvy, right? And you can't expect, somebody explain this to me. the system here, when you come and you battle when you battle your appraisals, you're like playing in the Super Bowl and you don't know how to play football. So nobody knows. You need to make it as easy, as simple as it is. I don't know where the box is to check on our appraisal, when we get our appraisal notice. I don't know where it is. I do know that you guys can do it. It doesn't, if you say you're doing it, the box you check to get to the evidence. I don't know where that is. I would need to see it.
But I just said just a moment.
I agree,
ago-
I'm saying, but that's not my point.
No.
But put it in,
The
but-
last 2 years, I've given all the evidence to
That's
all the
fine,
property.
that's fine. You might not be here in a third year or fourth year. Let's put this down in writing. What's wrong with putting it down in writing? That we do this? Like making that statement
Okay,
so
so-
property owners know. And
Okay, so, address number 4, the number 4 is the ACAD will only reappraise the property during the same year, once every 2 years. Again, the point there is that the model of the market activity from year to year changes very drastically. I will say that we're not the tip of the spear, even though a lot of people like to think we're the tip of the spear as far as market activity. The tip of the spear is actually Austin, Texas, you know, as far as what's going on tomorrow, as far as our market activity. But we're further back on the end of the spear. But we are a place that we have a lot of market activity. And I'll tell you some of the unique reasons why. Overall, our tax rates are low, you know, comparatively to other locations. And it's a very desirable place to be. And so when you couple those things, it makes this a very robust area that people want to move to. And therefore, the market activity changes all the time. And so it is incumbent upon this appraisal staff to have the most accurate appraisals year to year. And my suggestion would be not to do it every 2 years, but to do it every year, because there will be drastic changes from year in a 2-year period. For number 5, as far as the rubric, I do know that we do have some characteristics on our website already. It may not be the all-inclusive, you know, we do have all of our descriptors on our website, like there's a listing of those. But as far as how they relate to, like Eamon indicated, as far as they relate to, this is worth so many dollars. There is no rubric, just like Mr. Hudd had indicated, because it's part of the system. PC, just for example, is a porch contributory. What does that mean? Well, it's contributory to what it's attached to. A porch on a, I'm just going to make it on a drastic, you know, like an example. A porch that's attached to a mobile home has very little contributory value. But if you take a porch associated on the back of an $800,000 or $900,000 home, it has more contributory value because it's the general state and quality of construction that's commensurate with that larger class property. So those are matrices inside of our system that exist. And so it would be very difficult to change number 5 to you know, like to have a descriptor of all that because of some of the things that Mr. Burke had said, David Burke had said. So
May I address? As a teacher, what he's telling you is that a student takes a test and the teacher just decides what they want to give them based upon how they feel their answer matches up. One student could have one answer here and the same answer here, and those answers are valued the same. You cannot have a fair and equitable appraisal system if you have a pool 1 and you have a pool 5 and your pool is better than your pool, and it's just a random reasoning of who put it down. There's no criteria. We're not given any criteria of what things like the trailer pad 1, 2, and people are taxed on these things. What pools, we're not given any criteria about what they're have, but you have them on homes. So how can you how can you judge somebody on what something's worth if you don't have a rubric to distinguish the different categories? You're just kind of pulling it out of the air.
well, it's not out of the air. It's out of a computer system that's a complex matrix model, like it was described before. And things are reacted to differently, whether you'd like to admit it or not. The market reacts to things differently. I'm going to just I want you to picture this in your mind. Everybody's gonna do this exercise. I want you to imagine a $50,000 pool. Everybody got it? Now I want you to put it behind a $1,000 travel trailer. And I want you to put it on a $5,000 lot. Everybody have it? What's the reaction of that pool in the marketplace? Very little, because it's overpowered by the travel trailer in the $5,000 lot. Now I want you to take the same $50,000 pool, and I want you to put it behind $1 million home on a $530,000 lot. What's the contributory value of that thing? That's the point that I'm making. Some of these things are contributory factors to the main thing that's driving the value, which is either the land element or the improvement that's in front of the element. And so there are different things that are going on. It's just a simple example of things that happen in our makers. So, is there anything else?
Anything else? Anybody have?
I don't know why, I'm sorry, I was saying, I feel like dog against the taxpayers.
Yep.
At every chance, and I don't know why. We would like to like you guys, and that's, I mean, you don't need to respond to it, but I just want to tell you, we'd like to like you guys. You just feel like you're against us at every step of the way.
Well, I want to say for the record that I'm for the taxpayers. I like to communicate with the taxpayers. There's a lot of times that taxpayers don't feel like their property value should go up, and it's my burden as the administrator of this facility to prove, because the burden of proof for a market value lies with me proving the market value every year that they come in and protest. And they get that ability to do so, sir. And so when I present that information, they still don't have to agree with me in that situation. So,
Like playing in the Super Bowl and you don't even know football. That's what it's like for folks. You need to make it easier for them. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted Mrs. Rousseau. I'll sit quietly for the rest of the meeting.
Jeff, I'm not sure about that. Okay, last thing I would like to say then, as far as this appraisal plan that you're looking at today on page 915. The top paragraph there, the last statement, last sentence. The goal each appraisal cycle is to be as close as possible to 100% of market value. And I think when property sells, that's a pretty good indication of what the market value is. So once again, I would point out the great discrepancy that exists on Pearl Point, parts 1 and 2. And I would encourage this board to encourage the staff to look at that. I know you are not to take one particular piece of property and either defend it or attack it, but I would believe if this gross inequity is on books, and I have all this documentation given to us by the owners, that it probably exists elsewhere. And to be honest, in my job, I hope people agree with me. Sometimes they don't. I hope they like me. Sometimes they don't. You are here to do what is best for this community and for the taxpayers. And I would encourage you to do that. I don't know right now. Talk to people. They believe that's what's happening here. And that's a sorry thing. So thank you for your time. And thank you for the energy you put into this.
Mr. Doug, can I?
Okay.
So one of the things that the commissioner and I spoke about in the previous meeting was that part of the Pearl Point development is not complete. Also that I was not part of the conversation or I did not attend the meeting in which they presented their investment of corporate monies. And I don't know how much of that was infrastructure to bring some of the water and sewer out to that facility. But if you have some of that information, I'd be glad to look at it. I know as a point of policy, this board doesn't have any authority to actually ask me to do anything about any particular property valuation, but they can ask me to say, hey, are you sure that you've looked at this? And I know I've had conversations with my chief commercial appraiser over here, this commercial appraiser over here.
Right, I read his name and title.
Yeah.
In the plan.
And so Eamon and I have talked about Pearl Point, and one of the things that in light of that information that was presented to the commissioners board, we just didn't know where the number came from. It doesn't make sense to us. It seems, I'll just say this, it seems too high. And so, but having said that, I'd like to look in all of the information and how much of that was actually infrastructure.
I understand, and you explained that to me last year, and I haven't forgotten it. But it's not just infrastructure. There's a great disparity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so item number 5, consider and take possible action on the resolution adopting Aransas County Appraisal District 23 and 24 appraisal plan. Can I get a motion? Yeah, and that for discussion. So can I get a motion for adopting the 23-24 reappraisal plan?
The motion would open it up to discussion, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the 23-24 appraisal.
I need a second, open it up for discussion. Okay, so open for discussion. I will say that I do think that there are some valid points of consideration for future. It obviously would have to, in my opinion, we need to look at possible rubrics. I'm thinking, again, you're saying educate the public, give them all the opportunities. I don't see why we can't put flyers outside. If you want to argue your appraisals, here's where you go. Here's every flyer that you need. But again, I think it's up to the person themselves to do their own research or consulting them. And I think that would be a great job for you.
I think it's horrible. People in our community they're floundering in this appraisals. They don't know what to do. And y'all aren't making it any easier on them. Your thing is like, it's their responsibility. No, you are caretakers. Like, this is a quasi-government thing. It's there to assess. You can assess, you can make it as easy as you want, or you can make it as difficult as it is, but you always seem to want to err on the side of difficulty for the taxpayers. And I don't understand.
But I don't think that that's what they're erring on. I mean, they've given them everything that their evidence packet.
But I'm saying, why don't you put it in writing so that we have this as a standard? It's not guaranteed under the state statutes. You can guarantee it under this appraisal plan. The one about like getting informed if your appraisal, if something changes. I mean, put yourself in my situation. And if you had something like that changed on your appraisal card when you bought your piece of property, would you want to be informed? Would you want to be informed?
Yes, but again, the discussion is supposed to be amongst us right now, not between us. You had your citizens comment, you had your public hearing.
I don't want to do that.
I am assuming that, again, I get certain things moving forward. I can totally see how we can implement different ideas. And that's what this is all about, is moving forward in the right direction. And so knowing that that's an option.
We do have this coming up again. I don't know that these are with any ill intent or any or even bad ideas. I do feel that just to implement them today without me personally as a board member having time to spend more time reviewing them, consult with the attorneys on what we can do, cannot do, and knowing fully what that's going to require of staff to do it, that I would be prepared to act on it today. And that's a broad statement covering a lot of them. But I think some may be more easy than others, but just to push that upon the district without spending some time to figure out exactly what falls into our authority, what does not, what can be in an appraisal plan, what can't be in an appraisal plan, what puts us in violation of statute, what doesn't, what can be done. And then when it can be done, how do we do that? To Eamon's point, how do we pull data out of a matrix and make it understandable and put out something that's actually useful rather than just put out a bunch of, sure, we can inundate a lot of people with a lot of data, without specific instructions on how he wants this done and put them in a worse position when they were starting off because, or at least equal because they're equally confused. So I understand, I think the intent, and I think the intent is to make this easier to let people know best we can what's changing when it's changing, and then give them the backup information as best can be to understand whether it's even accurate change before they can come to protest, you know, as you mentioned, the 6 pools and things like that, you know, maybe it's appropriate, you know, to come there. I know for me, a lot of this is foreign, and I think it's something that we need to take under consideration, but I would not feel comfortable acting today on it without doing some more research on my own.
So would you consider tabling it until there's, so you can do more research?
We can't, we have to approve or deny the reappraisal plan today. So with that being said, any further discussion? Okay, so motion is approved. The reappraisal plan for 2023-2024 is approved.
All in favor? Call for the vote.
Oh, yeah, all in favor. Sorry. Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so now we are on item number 6. Consideration of and possible action regarding the Aransas County Appraisal District's 2022 audit by Mr. Jeffrey Smith.
Be like, well, not on the board. Oh, can't sleep. It's great. It's a great ability to help you sleep. Nothing else. It's got some really good stuff in there that help make your eyes open. Okay. Okay, I'll try to keep this brief. Just introduction for those you don't know. My name is Jeffrey Smith. I am the audit partner on your audit engagements. Been working on this audit for about 40 years. Last year was the first time I presented to the board, so the first time I was partner on the engagement last year. So one thing, Mike and his team, you have a very well-versed team with their history of how the operations go, so it makes the audit very smooth. We appreciate all of their help. We'll get started here real quick. We'll go over to about 3 pages in with the audit report. It does look somewhat different from it has in prior years, simply because the Financial Accounting Standards Board and Governmental Accounting Standards Board is changing the way the audit report looks. So we'll hit the highlights. First paragraph. In opinion, we have audited the accompanying financial statements of the governmental activities of Aransas County Appraisal District as of and for the year ended December 31, 2022. In our opinion, financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities of Aransas County Appraisal District as of December 31, 2022. So normally that one-liner used to be at the end of the report and you had to read the whole thing. They like to put it up front and center now where you get to see it up real quick. So under basis for opinion, we conducted our audit in accordance with auditing standards of the 70 United States of America and the standards applicable to financial audits contained in government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. Responsibilities of management. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with the accounting principles and for the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of financial statements that are free from material misstatement, whether it be fraud or error. And briefly, the auditor responsibilities, our objectives are to obtain, we're still on the front audit report. Our objectives are to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, and to issue the audit report that includes the opinion. So, just briefly, in performing an audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and governmental auditing standards, we do a few things. 1, exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism. We identify and assess the risk and material misstatement of the financial statement. We obtain an understanding of internal controls. We evaluate the appropriateness of accounting policy. We conclude whether in our judgments there are conditions or events that raise substantial doubt about Aransas County Appraisal District's ability to continue as a going concern for a reasonable period of time. That is the audit report. Now we can go forward to the next page, page number 3. This is the MD&A, known as the management's discussion and analysis. This is really management's opportunity to provide any information they want to further. So it's really kind of 2 pieces. You get the management discussion, you get the financial statements, and you get the auditor's footnotes to the financial statements. They're a little more in detail. So let's just go over some financial highlights real quick on page 3. The assets of the district exceeded its liability at the close of the 22 fiscal year by $1,177,000. Fund balance of the district at the close of the 22 fiscal year totaled $314,000. District's fund balance decreased for the year by $447,000. And the district had compensated absences of $47,263. And there's plenty of other information you can read there. We're going to go over to page number 5. Yeah. So the unrestricted categories of net assets had a balance of $196,000 a year. So just kind of, you look at that little table right there in the middle of page number 5, kind of gives you a comparison of current year to, or I say current year, so I'm saying 22 year under audit, prior to 21. You get your cash values, 22 had 546, 21 had almost $1 million. But then you look at your capital assets, and your capital assets in 22 were 981,000, where in 21 they were 616,000. So you see a lot of that coming back, which in fact is the building we are studying today. And again, down below, this is the district's net position increased by 70,463. And again, the general fund balance did decrease by 446,000. Go to the next page. Again, kind of a 2-year comparison here. Things going on, just kind of looking top line under revenues, charges for services. In 2022, it was 1.14, almost 6 million. And in 21, it was 1,115,000. So we'll go to expenses, and this is where you get interesting on certain things, but personnel services, you see a large decrease there in personnel services. 21 was 810,000. And 22 was 534,000. So for those of you that sat through this last year, you know, we talked in some pretty great detail about the GASB pension liabilities and how they go up, down, and move all around from side to side. We will go into a little more detail on that in a couple of minutes, why that falls into personnel services. But to keep going real quickly, total expenses overall, 2022 were $1,075,000, 21 1.3. With an increase for the year, 70,461, and prior year negative. We'll go to the next page, page number 7. Just a note there in that top section where it talks about non-spendable fund balance, which is your prepaid insurance accounts. They have already been paid, they're prepaid, you can't spend them. So let's talk about committed fund balance for a minute. This is your fund balance as of the end of 22. I know there's been some discussion regarding how to handle a committed fund balance, but that list as it sets right there in the MD&A is how it is at the end of 2022. That's where it stands. Any funds to be added or removed from the committed fund balance have to be done by resolution. They cannot be done just taken off. The board put them there, the board has to take them. And again, just another highlight, they love to repeat it over and over, but the very last line, the fund balance for general fund did decrease by $400. Over the next page, real quick on page 8, go to the bottom of the page. Actually, we'll go up. Let's just go to the bottom page of capital assets. At the end of 2022, you will see that you have some additions and deletions there. As far as how capital assets work, they're 981,000 for the year, and that includes capital assets in the beginning, and that is how it's reported for governmental activities. Okay, so I'll point that out to you so you can see that. We'll go over some more of that in a minute. Go to the next page real quick. Under net pension liability, this is where we start to talk a little bit about the deferred inflows, deferred outflows of pension liabilities. And you will see that you had a large reduction of net pension liability in the year, which leads back to that personnel services number that was the decrease. All right, go over to page number 11. Forward. And we get to something that at least we can, I think we realize what's going on with this. So this is again the December 31, 2022 governmental fund balance sheet. And as you notice there at the top line, we talked about it previously, cash is 546,000, the prior year was at 998,000. Capital asset adjustment is 981,000, when the prior year it was 616,000. Net pension liability, you'll see that in the middle of the screen under liability, or sorry, screen page, just looking on the computer. You'll see it's negative 164,000 when prior year was a positive 311,000. Deferred inflows related to pensions, current year 432,000, prior year was 82,000. And then we get down here to fund balance. Okay, so when we look at fund balances, you see the non-spendable, which we talked about, a prepaid of 10,131. We have an unassigned balance of negative 384,000, and we have a committed fund balance of 688 to get your total fund balance in line with what we discussed earlier at $314,000. All right, let's go to the next page, page number 12. This will be the statement of governmental fund revenue, expenses, and change in fund balance. So I just kind of want to give you the quick highlight of this. Total revenues to the general fund current year 1.145 million, and last year, just so you know, was right at 1.115. So about a $30,000 difference in revenues from year to year. Expenditures, the kind of see there's some highlighted numbers there. We got, I mean, not highlighted, but personnel services 688, supplies and operating expenses of 593, and professional services 278. If you all real quick, we'll just go to page 37, which is the very last page in the booklet. It will give you a detailed list of those three numbers that we just talked about. You'll see the 688, the 593, and the 270. We do not put those on the face of the financial statement because it would make financial statement very long, very cumbersome to read. So we give that as a supplemental schedule of expenses in the back for you to get further detail on. Okay, so we'll come here and then we'll move forward. At this point on page 13 is when the notes of the financial statements actually start. We'll jump forward right away to page number 20 in the financial statement, the notes. Then again, you'll see that little schedule that you saw before. Just noting that total committed fund balance was $688,000, which included the Hurricane Harvey repairs of $290,000. We'll go next to page number 22. Okay, so again, I mentioned to you earlier about the difference between general fund and reconciliation of governmental funds. So you'll see something here on the top says element of reconciliation is capital assets that are reported in the statement of net assets, but not necessarily in governmental funds. So you do have capital assets of 1.4 million with accumulated depreciation of 464,000, which does get your total net assets to 981,000. Going down further than that, included in non-current assets is part of the pension deferred. See the deferred inflows, outflows, along with the pension liability that you do your adjustment to pension assets. So we'll go over a little bit more of that in just a few minutes. Okay, but again, down below, governmental funds, statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance include reconciliation between net changes in fund balance, which is total governmental funds and changes in net asset of governmental activities. One element of reconciliation explains governmental funds report capital outlays as expenditures. So when we report fixed assets, when we report them on a capitalized fixed asset schedule, we depreciate them. Governmental funds report all capital outlays as expenses. Okay, so when you looked at that page 37, and you looked at those itemized expenses, the very last page, you look at that first column, under, down under supplies and operating expenses, second from the bottom, you do see $405,000 in building damage expenses. Okay, that we capitalize as part of a normal financial statement, as part of a building. And we depreciate. All right, moving forward to page number 24. Deposits and investments, always something to talk about with the bank, issues that go on in the world today. I'd like to let you know if you're secure and what you have in cash. So your carrying value, according to your books, is $546,000 in your bank, looking at page 24. In your bank balance per your bank statement is $575,000. Of course, FDIC coverage is only $250,000 per bank. But you have securities pledged against your bank account, which means that you have an extra layer of protection against your bank balances and security in the bank. You're actually totally secured in the bank up to 1.589 billion. Okay, so your 546,000 carrying value, although it does exceed the FDIC coverage, has securities pledged to protect. Go over to the next page. Again, now this is not the governmental approach to fixed assets. This is just how we handle fixed assets according to, as it would be in a general fund. You do see the addition of the buildings there on page 25 at the top. So you do see the increase of the buildings and then some increase in equipment and depreciation as follows. Moving forward to page number 27. One of the things I wanted to point out to you, and what we'll look at in a minute at a more detailed year-to-year schedule, is under net pension liability that you guys did have net investment income for the year in your pension liability program of $715,000. Which is a higher number than normal years. So let's go to page number 31. Okay, we've been talking, and the MD&A loves to point it out like 5 times that your decrease in your general fund was like $400-something. Got a repeated issue. There are 2 numbers in there I'd like you to take note of. Supplies and operating expenses, negative $383,000, which means you spent more than what you had budgeted to spend. Okay, and then professional services, which were legal fees, okay, of $97,000 unfavorable. Pretty much you take those 2 pieces of the pie and you're getting to that change. Okay. Now, that being said, it's important to remember that $290,000 have been committed for the building. So this is not showing that in here. Okay, let's go to the next page, page 32, and this is where I wanted to. Honestly, it's kind of a small schedule to read, but I kind of want to give you some just brief rundown of the changes that we see. Again, these are not numbers that we audit. This information comes from the state to you, and we use these numbers to report in your audit. But I kind of want you to take a look at halfway down the page of that net investment income that I briefly discussed with you. And I want you to see that $715,000 number under net investment. And I want you to kind of look to the right of that as the years prior. To see that you haven't recognized that kind of income in years past. So it was obviously a very good year for your plan, which did entail the swing. Now remember, this is 21's numbers. So we always report 2 years. But that it had a very good year, and that's why you see that swing rather than a bunch of liabilities being reported, all of a sudden you have an asset. So that's how it shows. And again, it's hard to explain that to you. This is your
I
report.
believe we've had them try to come explain it direct to us.
We had that conversation.
But when you look at this number, it's like, how did we get to this? I mean, what happened? I can simply report. They did something right here. You had a great year in investment. Unfortunately. Yeah. But I wanted to point that out to you so you do see the numbers and you can see it as a comparison over the prior years to see where that gets you. And of course, with that, And then if you look down at that net pension liability line, and then as a net pension liability as a percentage of payroll, you'll see all of a sudden that causes you to go into a negative coverage. And that's just a big year. Let's go over to page 37 real quick. And again, I will just point out to you. Actually, let's go to page 36 real quick. Sorry, I skipped the report. That is an audit report on the additional information. And it just shows you that we have looked at that information and just to form an opinion on them as a statement as part of your full financial statements. And it's just presented for purposes of additional analysis, and it's not a required part of those statements. We just do that. That way, you see that number a little more broke down. You get a little more information as to what I could tell you 593,000, but this doesn't tell you a whole lot. This gives you a little more detail as to where those numbers were spent and how they were done. That is the audit reports.
May I say one thing? Would you look into how much it would cost, what, if there'd be a cost savings associated with going to only appraising once every 2 years? And with maybe not appraising on the, after somebody went to protest?
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, and time to speak is up. Okay, consider and take possible action on the 2022 appraisal district audit by Mr. Smith.
Make a motion to accept. You want to make it
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, number 8, consider.
Is there a possibility that you, can you do these on occasion?
You want to go ahead and do the Harvey?
I think that it's appropriate, given
That's
what
fine.
Mr. Smith did.
I thought about that when he was talking about it.
Because you want to reconcile those.
Okay, so going back to what Mr. Smith said earlier about the Harvey, and then building damage and whatnot, that's your item number 9 on here. So what we can do to go over and make this a in favor budget is we need to take, consider and take the possible action to amend the 2023 budget to transfer the committed Hurricane Harvey fund balance to the unassigned.
If I may just real
Yes.
quick, yeah, a little bit. Because any funds that the board makes a motion to put onto a committed fund list, the board has to make a motion to take off. Okay, it's not just because you spend it, does it automatically come off? For instance, if you were to look at your committed fund list, you'll see you have like building repairs, you have server expenses that you could see. You may do $30,000 in repairs, but you have committed for the following year another $30,000 in repairs. Okay, so anything that you want to remove from the committed list, I informed Mike just briefly that you would pass a resolution, as I believe that you guys have drafted to get that off. Now, that won't come off of this audit because this audit is prepared as of the year end.
Right.
Okay, but it would be something that would reflect, it will not change your overall net fund balance. It will still be the $314,000. It will simply reallocate some of that money from the committed to the unassigned. Okay. And again, overall, your fund balance will remain at $314,000. It will just look different between the categories. So the net.
Yeah, and in summary, this board and previous boards have put a committed fund balance of, and they generally named it Hurricane Harvey for the purpose of rebuilding this building that we're in. And, we've done the majority of that work and the monies are spent. So you would just take it from that committed fund balance and say, hey, listen, we want to reconcile our unassigned fund balance. And just like Mr. Smith indicated, it doesn't do anything to the bottom line. It's just moving it.
Yeah,
Just recategorize.
whoever.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve resolution proposed amendment to 2023 budget and for the Hurricane Harvey committed funds. I would also would there fix the typo from Harvey.
It was, that was we fixed it yesterday.
Yeah,
When it was
Okay.
printed
So
out.
it's already been fixed.
Yeah, it's already been fixed. in your-
Resolution proposing amendment to that's in your budget transfer. Okay, Harvey committed.
You don't like Corvette? You didn't like Corvette? It's a sister.
We don't need another one.
We don't want to meet her.
No,
Do you have the,
Okay.
do you-
that was not the original, that, I have the other one. in my- from my credit.
But you need, if you're making a resolution right now, they need a corrected. Do they not have a corrected, Karen?
Not
Corrected
on,
what?
A Harvey resolution?
that was just. Hold on.
Can you make sure that it's printed, please, so that they can sign it today? The corrected Harvey, not Harvette.
Okay, I have a misspelling in my audit report too, that I found, so it does have it.
I'd like to point one thing out with regard to the budget amendment under the tax code 6.06. Okay, what section? The amendment is done in two steps. What the board has got before it is a resolution proposing to amend the budget. And then the board secretary sends a copy of the budget to each taxing participating in the district. Once 30 days have run since delivery of that letter, then the board would take up a resolution permanently adopting the budget amendment. That's in the code. It says you do it in two board meetings. So what the board is doing today is taking up the proposed budget and goes to the tax amendments. 30 days later, the board takes up adoption of the final budget amendment.
And we do have a copy in your documents of the draft letter that the secretary would sign subsequent to a vote on the resolution.
All right, so, motion made. Do I have a second?
We all should we vote.
I thought. we were-
She seconded. We're discussing.
We're in discussion, okay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, so now we are on,
Yeah, you're gonna take it.
okay, thank you. Okay, so, item number 8, consider and take possible action on the election of a vice chair. We felt like this last year, we needed a vice chair with Anna's her crazy schedule coming in and out and whatnot. It's always nice to have a, second person in command that, you know, 1 or 2 are out.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody, so last year it was Travis, so I will, consider to take, for creating a vice president, vice chair. Yes, I just did it real
You did it
quick.
real quick.
Second. Second. Okay, any discussion? You're out. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Say it louder, Travis. Okay, so now we are in the, item number 10, chief appraiser's report.
There is also item number 9. which
We
is the
already
budget.
did.
We haven't done the budget planning.
Oh, shoot.
But I'm glad to do the chief appraiser's report first, if you'd like, because some of it is relevant.
Okay.
And so,
I'm gonna do that, but
and so the chief appraiser's report is item number 10. So there's 3 number 10s. There's 10A, 10B, and 10C. So let's do the supplemental role presentation first.
okay,
Details or detail groups, and then there's also the certified role changes. One is a summary and one is like an exhaustive one. You can see that the group role changes. Remember the way that we explain a certified role, it's like a scroll, you put a seal on every time that there's like exemptions added, or there's joint motions to correct, or there's a lawsuit that's been settled, or anything that changes the value in the previous year. I have to break the seal, I have to do the change and put another seal, and then I have to tell you about it. This is that summary. So you have certified group role changes of group number 460, 461, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69. Oh, yeah, through 469. And I'm glad to answer or try to answer any questions about any of those role changes in the, the detail is really exhaustive. You don't probably want to look at that. I mean, you can look at that one, but it's really big. The summary is more what you can look at.
Which is,
Summary is called certified role changes to assessed value for groups 460 to 469. It'll be familiar to you when you start looking at like joint motions and homestead caps and.
I ask this every time, but rather than me go through it, it's going to be representative of major changes since the last time we met on legal outcomes.
Yep, you'll see group number 469.
Page,
Those are pretty big changes right there. So we settled a couple of lawsuits.
what page would we?
It's
According to the computer screen.
page 3.
Thank you.
See it? At the bottom, group 469.
It's right here.
Are you on the right one?
Yeah, no,
Right.
it's the,
Certified
It's-
role changes to assess value.
so,
There you go.
so by 2021, it was
Cool.
2.5, and this year it's 4.8.
That one, right now.
You're familiar with that one,
Oh, yeah, I'm not paying in the entities right now, because I keep
right?
trying paying the refund.
So the way that, and we had this discussion before, but to summarize, people have the ability to sue some of these, sue for, like they say, that the market value is wrong. At some point, it becomes a tax, I'm gonna use this term, it becomes a tax saving mechanism because you can continue to fight with, we already know about the legal fees, and I really appreciate my counsel here, but he gives me good counsel. But there are times when it's just, there's required mediations that are set forth by judges. So they put you in a room and they make you like try to hash it out. It's not always successful. Sometimes it is. And so sometimes we have successful mediations. So there you go. So that was one of the big ones for you. It was one of the big lawsuits that year. In 21 and 22 years. Sometimes they had multiple lawsuits. Great.
Yeah, so the change in value, is that a change in value or is that a change in?
Yeah, there's a change in value.
The 2.5 and 4.8?
Yes.
No, it went 2.5 in that year. And the next year it went to 4.8.
The values changed 2.5, they changed 4.8.
Right, so obviously this, yes, obviously this property was a high value, multi-million-dollar property that changed, reduced by 2.5 in 2021.
And reduced in 22 by 4.8.
That's correct.
Yes.
And we'll continue.
The lawsuit had 2 tax years. In that was.
And that one lost you.
And it was one of the biggest ones that we had on file.
Yeah, it was the biggest thing I've ever had to pay that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at some point, it becomes. It just, I have to wait on that. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions about the supplemental rule changes? Okay, this is the best place. This is, I can talk about, just generally speaking, I can talk about anything in my chief appraiser's report. It's just me communicating with you about different things. This was probably.
It has to be on the,
Supplemental role presentation.
well, no, it has to be something that is on the agenda.
Okay. Well, then, what I was gonna put in here, what I was gonna talk about was just the 23 appraised values and generality, but it's not on the It's not on the
List.
list, so we won't talk about that, but can I just generally say what the value is then? Okay. Does everybody know what the values have happened this year? Okay, so If you want, I can.
There is, I mean, later at your own leisure, I believe it's in here. For you to read at whatever point.
Okay. Karen, can you put on next agenda an item D and put 23 value summary?
Yes.
So I can talk about it exhaustively. And I will tell you how many protests we'll have at that time.
Which will be good.
Well,
We'll have it before.
yeah, we'll have the budget kind of, hopefully we'll have that kind of.
We are going to discuss financials. In a second, I would assume under financial discussion, we can ask questions with regards to what we feel the impact would be. I'm asking actually attorney of this very financial, we can discuss what we feel the impact would be on what we know the change of appraisals to be the anticipated increase in protests that we will come in, how we feel that's we adequate on what we.
Right. Remember that item number, the answer is yes. Item number 8 is consideration of possible action, but there's not a motion that could be made on the budget today. This is the meeting before the required.
Well, we have a B on here, right, report about financials.
Yes.
Other financials, we share where we stand here today. We can see where we have left and we can see,
Absolutely.
you know.
Let me go into item number 10B, financials. There's 2 reports. The first is the January through April report. And so you can see that January through April represents 33% of the year. And you can see that the overall spent, a real good snapshot is to look at that bottom line percentage. That we spent 35% of the 33% that we budgeted for 2023. And so then specifically in each line item, you can look, if some of these line items, we only get one bill a year, and we pay that early in the year. Others, it's just a portion over time. There's really nothing it's really out of whack. The 98% on aerial photography, that's a 1 bill a year thing. The miscellaneous, that's going to affect your budget. You can see that there's nothing really that's happened this year that can really speak to next year. But the biggest thing that we can look at is the other financial report. So I'm going to have you pull out of that one and go to the financials, which is called financials 22 January to December full year. And that's the one that we presented last time as well. And this is the one where you'll see that we were over budget by 52,000, the red at the bottom. Okay. Now, where are some items that we were out? That's what you're referring to, Travis, that the legal budget, we had the 107 in legal budget, or that was spent. And that is indicative of when we'll go into the budget planning, we're using that number times a factor to estimate for what's anticipated in 2024 budget. And of that last year's snapshot, you can see that by far is the biggest outlier. You see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Beyond that, we're going to go to item 10C, the lean update. We're going to talk about this a little bit because in our 24 budget, you'll notice that the interior was done. Those funds have been expended.
I had a quick question. Expenses for the appraisal review board. Where are they in here?
Yes.
And where?
Yeah.
It's that.
On the financial? Yep,
Yeah.
sure are. So it's in the middle. So if you look at the full year.
Board of review expense.
And it's the salaries, when they come in, they get paid a certain amount, either a half day or a full day. And we have so many appeals that need to be heard over that time. I will say that when they're here, they work very, very hard. Because they're in here all day listening to anything from all kinds of disputes. And so yes, that's what the appraisal review gets paid.
And you decided to pay them for the year whenever they work rather than at the end of the year. That we decided.
Right, that's what this board made a decision on late in 22. I don't know. They didn't have any, they only had one meeting so far in 22-3. So, you know, this next cycle, they should, you know, yeah. Start, I mean, their busy times in the summer.
The determines your pay. Statute,
No, you do. You get to say whether they're being paid enough or not enough or whatever. I have a recommendation to increase their salary. That's, well, I mean, it's part of budget discussion, but you're not gonna make a motion today, probably.
I didn't think so, I just wanted to know.
Yeah, but it was done through a survey. You'd like to see graphs of other CADs and what they're paying their, you know.
Whatever we discuss.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, any other questions on the financials thus far? Item C is the building update. Remember that the interior of the building has been finished.
I'm sorry, I will.
Go ahead, sure. Not a problem.
Protest period is defined in statute on how long it lasts.
It's 30 days after the notice is given. It finishes through certification that goes July 20th of every year. And so we start, it says April 15th, as soon as practically thereafter.
Their busiest time is during the meetings when they're actually holding the review meetings.
Absolutely.
Isn't that, those can't go on until December and then.
Yeah, but there are other hearings that happen kind of. Year round. A person can file a motion under the code section, not a protest.
Under chapter 41 is what you're used to when you hear appeal,
Yes.
but chapter 25 is used a whole bunch, and more people are filing what's called chapter 25 motions to correct. And every time I get I think my property value is too high, chapter 25, and somebody hands it to me, I have to hand it to a board and they have to make a determination whether they'll hear the case first. And then secondly, they'll hear the case later in the year. And so it's not during that, what's normal from April until August timeframe. It's gonna happen in the fall or even in the next winter, you know. Yeah.
For example, if somebody gets us their protest, coming under chapter 25. And cover the delinquency date and have the ARB to cut the value if it's appraised by 1/3.
So the answer is they're hearing cases. They just a few weeks ago, they heard cases for 22 appraisals. So
The deadline to protest is
30 days after the notice is given, which is this year, it's May 26 for 26 of approximately 30,000 parcels. We have about 3,000 or 4,000 that were yet to deliver. Why are they late? Why are they later? Because we always withhold BPP because people can turn renditions in late by request. And also the mineral import hasn't gone in yet. And then there's two other categories. There's the ag. Ag is another, but that's just about 600 properties of ag. And then there's a few little specialties like flow homes and or it's called 11135 at risk. We still have properties that were damaged as a result of the storm. And they're still trying to rebuild. And they, under the statute, they get a homestead and they get time. And so they're special, and we have to give notices to those people like, hey, are you still, like, what's going on with your house kind of thing.
so the majority will know May 1st.
May 26th.
May 26th. No, most of we're a little too early, I would think, or are we not, to see what this, I would assume we're gonna have a high activity protest season. Are you seeing that yet, or?
We already have, we already have close to 900. And
Compared to?
last year we had 3,500 total roughly. Does that sound right? 35-ish last year. I think that number is going to be really close. I mean, we're going to have 35 to 3,900. Yeah, well, I mean, who knows? I mean, we can have.
We're gonna at least, we should be up, or we expect to be up in 40.
Yes, we have one of the largest.
What does that do to the increase? What does that do to our, so we were right on budget last year with our ARB expense. That's really all I'm going at is our ARB budget line for that? Is that set because we pay them a final amount, or they depend on the amount of hearings? Will that-
The amount of hearings that they have. That's
So it
correct.
could go.
That's correct. So we estimate a number of days based on the previous amount of
Right.
days. And you can look at that number and say, I want to add 10 or 15% to the amount of time, either days or half days. And make an estimation of that
Sure.
board of review. So that's your decision. I mean,
Well, we were dead on last year, we missed on legal fees, so it clearly wasn't on a few times. This one, passed, but I would assume this year we may be off, but it's hard to tell where.
yes, so the answer is yes, I expect as many protests or more. I've asked my appraisers, we have had one of the largest increases. Market value wise on record, we're having historical building going on right now, even in spite of all of what you hear, like the inflated rates that are going on. I mean, just look around. I mean, entire neighborhoods are being built now. And so there's what's called a lot of new value being added.
Well, I'll hook up with our budget, I watched the increase in legal and we still fell on budget, so we'll see what we, I just wanted a better understanding of how that worked and.
Okay, moving on to, sure, go ahead. Yeah. No, this is all good.
So, so I understand, so your number of protests at 35 and 3900, that's per parcel.
No, 3,500 actual pieces of paper that say I protest.
That's what I mean, but is that per parcel? I mean, in other words, if you have 5 parcels of land and you want to protest 3 of the 5.
Yeah, yeah.
that's per parcel.
It's part, no, it's, yeah, it's per parcel. It's like if you have a protest,
You're saying not per ounce.
it's not per owner, it's per parcel. Yeah.
Okay, per parcel. Reason why not is go from whatever 90,000 acres parcel all goes out, development, you can figure that the parcel protest will increase. No more smaller parcel, you're taking chunks of land and parceling it out.
That's correct.
So when you're talking about building, the amount of building that's going on, you can actually figure that numbers probably more people.
Yes, and so when you look at the general idea of like, if you back away from like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff going on. You pull back on the yoke and you say, what's really going on? We have basically 30,000 parcels. And even if you, like last year, I want to say the number was 3,500. That's a little, what is that, like 12%, something like that. So in the grand scheme of things, that's what it's historically going to be. But having said that, we have one of the largest market value increases that this county has ever seen due to market activity. So there's no promises to that. All right. All right. All right, continuing on, agenda item 10C. As you know, that the inside of this building got completed. There were a couple items that previous board had said, okay, what are we going to do about the storage in the back? What are we going to do about the painting and the waterproofing of the outside and the dams, both the hurricane proof doors in the front, and then also the water dams on the front and back. Those were, you asked me to get the contractor at the time to give you proposals, and that was presented a time ago. So I've got them here for you to look at again. These are items 10C. You'll see 3 proposals. They'll start with the word proposal. One is the exterior building work. And that's 24,000. This is an old number. This number was given to you May of 22. So this is like a year old number.
Almost to the day.
Yeah. The next proposal is the proposal with it's called the main entrance storefront with hurricane framing and glass, and that's to make that hurricane proof, like the actual glass hurricane proof. That's 20,000 and change. And again, that is an old proposal. Actually, that is today. Year old. And the last proposal that you have here, that's marked proposal, is the improvements to the existing storage building. As you know, you remember that when we left our building that was destroyed over on 601 South Church, We moved a lot of historical files. At the time a decision was made, and we made a decision to put them away from Aransas County, put them in Victoria. We got a long-term storage, and we put those documents there. At some point, we want to get those back, but they need to come back in the air conditioned space. So we want to make that back storage building air conditioned. This is that would help with that. This proposal, and that proposal is for 21 and change. Again, it's about a year old. And so I can, between now and the next meeting, I can, if this board is interested to affect the 24 budget by any one of these items, or 2 or 3 of these items, you can make that change. You can actually affect next year's budget and say, we want to do this proposal or that proposal. And between now and then, I can actually own Progressive Structures and get their number to see what their today's number is.
Do you want to tell them what you prefer on it for us to, like, the priorities? On
Yes, my preference is to get the exterior painting and the waterproof dams. Second, I would like the windstorm. If we can bite off the first 2 together, it would be good. And then the next year cycle, if you want to wait until 25 cycle, we can do the storage last. The files are safe where they are. They're just hard to get to,
What it be for sure.
I think I have that in the budget information. I think I have some of that information in there. I don't have it like right here.
I remember what he told me, but it wasn't. It's yeah, major.
I wanna say-
And they're inland right now. They're in hurricane season.
$6,000 or $8,000 a year, something like that. The other proposals was one that was a whole building generator, which was like enormous, and at the time when y'all saw it, you said there's no way. The other Excel spreadsheet is kind of a summary of, because there's been a number of years, there's been some insurance money that's been pushed our way, and we've spent a lot of that. So what is the summary of all of those things? You see that the insurance money shows $886,000. We had the purchase of this building several years ago. We had some remaining Hurricane Harvey money. That $290,774 looks familiar to you because you just made a resolution to move it from committed fund balance over to the unassigned fund. Then we had the this is a renovation for all of the stuff that happened with this building. You can see that we had some additional insurance money from the TNL flood that brought our total up to the 420 and change. We had Levy Dykma that we spent $396,000 on. We also had the Progressive Structures. I'm sorry, Levy Dykma was $23,000. Progressive Structures was the $335,000. They were the winning competitive bid at the time. I want to say that number was $319,000, but there were some overages. There were some what's called change orders that were approved at the time. Texas State Modular, we had that double wide that was out there that we were in for a while. We had the network cabling service that we had. Armstrong Warehouse, that's the number you were looking for. This is $7,600 of storage fees. You see that there?
We're still paying that.
Yeah, we're still paying that. That's gonna be a year.
Every year.
That's gonna be a year. There's two different.
They're gonna have to go.
There's two different, two different ones. And that's all I have for the building. So this is relevant for your discussion. Again, this board doesn't need to make a decision on what to do with the 24 budget today, but it's for something for you to think about. Like there's an actual line item on there that says future building, and it's yellow, and you get to decide how much you want to put in that box, right?
So I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
For we're getting $8 grand a year on storage, and it's going to cost you, let's say, $24. So to fix up your building out there, where we have the stores now, that they have full-time generators, backups, and things of that nature.
I don't believe so. It's in Victoria.
They're in no better shape than we are if that, because if we bring it here and the AC is great while it's working, if it goes out there and install, it's really have to deal with.
Right.
For those documents, nothing great. Storage shed, but Those do this and,
Hurricane.
yeah, it's better than Victoria.
That's a question this board should consider.
I just don't know what it is.
No, I think-
I can tell you that it withstood the last one. It's still standing. There was no major damage to the roof. But it does need to be secured and it does need to be air conditioned.
What story?
So the initial files that were moved from the back part of our old storage building, or not storage building. We had a room that
Let me
was
ask you this. What's stored there that would matter if we lost them?
those initial, what's called historical rolls.
It concerns me that we bring them back to the coast to store them.
Yeah.
Well, then
That's just the offset. We can talk about it, but I'm just
No.
thinking out loud, like, I mean, it can be taken up by hurricanes. We have a backup anywhere. Do we scan those in? Do we?
Well, that's the
Did it
other
hide
thing
them?
is, why don't you, instead of spending the money to do that, you can look at doing the scan, which might be a little bit cheaper to scan them all into the cloud.
again,
And then that might be an option instead of spending the money on, and then you'll also
You can-
check
you
the
can-
code for historical. If you
There
present
are-
it to the historical board and they don't want them, you need to check like retention.
Yeah,
And those are different things that you can check into to find out.
different documents have different retention
Right.
years, like the number of years you have to keep things, and so. I can do some research. Here's the easy fix right now. You can put a line item for $8,700 or $9,000 or whatever. And say, listen, this year, we're gonna get some really good information on. What would it cost to, like, we need to know about retention, which I can investigate what's exactly all there, because we were moving stuff like, just like, come get all of the stuff in this room, because I know that there's historical rolls here. I don't know what else is here, but I know that there's historical rolls here. Secondly, we can also investigate what it would cost to scan everything. And then eventually get rid of it. But the easy fix would be to get a line item for storage. We do have what's called a miscellaneous. That we can just keep it there until we're full.
Yeah. I know some of the other ones, because I have a bunch of stuff that needs, because I need space. Mine isn't so much. I'm out of space, since we're not moving to the courthouse. I don't have a lobby. I don't, so there is a lot of stuff. I've been doing the research on the historical and retention and. An option of also doing the same thing, moving it to an off-site.
We can
Okay.
compare notes. And
Yeah.
Well, we can do.
Go in on the joint.
Yeah, I think that,
Cause I do know, like for me, and that maybe there was only 1 year technically that I had to by the tax code law. To keep the roll, and that was when the appraisal district was created, that 1 year. It was, and I had those, and I had those all in an area, so I know these cannot be touched, period. They are permanent retention. I just
Yeah.
cannot, that was the year.
So in summary, to all of those, you have 3 basically scopes of work. One is the exterior painting and waterproofing of the dams. The other is the front glass, hurricane proof of the front door area. And the third is the storage, which you may end up not doing. And so that's something for you to consider. But that's all that we have for items 10C. And moving on, then we can move back to the item, what is it, 7?
7.
And then it's all your show.
Okay, so going back to item number 7 after that is consider and take possible action on the 2024 budget planning. There's really no action needed on this, in my opinion, but I think you've got your information. We do need to set a date on when we need to go over that.
Right, these documents were given to you in advance, you can have them, you can mold them, you can ask any questions of me today. Like really, when you're looking at the 2024 proposed budget, that's what I'm proposing. And on that line item, there's 2 things that I did not have at the time that I gave it to you, which was Anna's data processing that because we have a shared system on data and the building projects. Everything else, I put a number to based on my estimation. To your point, what was the question like on the legal? The legal services that I have budgeted next year, 126, was 107 last year. I know, what I had last year, and I know what I'm estimating for, being informed that there's some increased fees from, our council, and I'm grateful for his council and his team's council. The other item that's the biggest item on there, and you can look at this at your leisure, is the personnel services. That's one of the big things that you'll see on there from year to year. And the reason for that is that this board has indicated to me that they know that Josie, who is both a bookkeeper and a deeds clerk, and if you want some evidence on how good a job Josie does, you just had an audit presentation by somebody that started with a statement very similar to the fact that he said, this is in good order, we have a good team. He's talking about Josie. So we have a good bookkeeper, and this board has previously said that you want a shadow for an entire year for bookkeeper. That's at $40,000 a year job.
Which you'll see the increase in insurance and things like that.
Yeah.
Based on.
And that's that breakdown for all of that is in the pay schedule. So that's in the proposed pay schedule, which again is given to you. You don't have to make any decisions about this today. That's the reason we do it in advance. But I'll try to answer any questions that you might have today.
Josie does have my numbers. The email them to them.
Okay,
So
it might have been,
It was yesterday.
Okay,
You had that.
yeah.
So
You and I
basically,
talked.
was this emailed out or was it just in this?
all of it was emailed.
Okay, so if you got that, take a look at it. See if you have any questions between now and we need to set the date for the budget, which is by June 10th. Is that correct? So,
Valuation services, there's a breakdown of valuation services in the budget planning. And that just tells you like, who do we pay for certain people to do certain things? We pay Pritchard Navitt to do both our ag and our mineral appraisals. BIS is the software collection that we use in the field. TREP is a subscription service, and so it's CoStar for information, specifically with the commercial and industrial type properties. TransUnion is information associated with, getting our sales. We don't have to go through a local MLS anymore. We can go to a warehouse to get a clearinghouse requirements. Source Strategies is the fact book that has to do with hotel, motel income valuations. And so that's part of our valuation services breakdown for that line item. So that's where our numbers come from there. Another thing that you indicated that you wanted, or that you wanted to consider are the, there is a breakdown in your thing, and it's been given to you in an email. For whatever reason, if you don't have it, I'd like you to all look at it right now, so that make sure when you go home, you see it. It's called the copy of Aransas CAD 24 budget estimate summary review. That's an important one for you to look at. It's an Excel spreadsheet. What you need to know there is that all the items in yellow, our software company is taking those offline this year. Okay, so they are replacing them with the items in green. Sometimes it's a 1-to-1, sometimes it's a little bit of an increase, but you need to know what that is. The items in blue, are items that you wanted me to research for, I think I mentioned this before, which are the homestead online forms, where more people are wanting to turn in their homestead forms online through a portal. And then the last one was the deed process services agreement, which you'll remember, I don't know if it was the last meeting or 2 meetings ago, there was I gave you a chart in the increased number of deeds that we have. And that's where we're having a lot of backlog. Specifically, it affects Anna's office, because when we get too far in the rears with deeds, then everything just rolls down hill. And so what this deed processing is a quote from Harris Governor, which is our software company, that would actually have a person doing our deeds in-house. Now, why is that advantageous? Well, because they're in our system. If they saw a deed, They're gonna be able to process about 95% of these deeds, about 5% are really, really complicated. But for the majority, they're gonna be able to process. Well, what's important about that? Well, they have our data. So if you take a parcel and it had 3 lots, but only 2 of them transferred and 1 of them remained in this person's name, they're able to not only do the split, but they're able to do the deed work behind it in the system, which is huge. Splits, merges, GIS, they're able to do all of that associated with those processes. With those deeds.
To train somebody to do that. Could you?
Yeah, well,
That
we
might be
can't,
good.
we can't.
Eventually, it would take them a long time to learn all that stuff, and you got somebody already immediately
Yeah,
doing it.
we can do it. We have been able to muddle through. But to your point, like how much of this are we gonna get and how much are we gonna continue to see? This is gonna be, this, in my opinion, this area is gonna continue to be a place that people come to en masse. And the reason for that is historically, we have comparatively low tax rates. Like when you compare it to like an Austin or a Houston or a San Antonio. So.
Yes.
More importantly.
Yeah.
In other places, they put tax rate.
Right. Right. So those are the items. You don't have to do anything with budget planning today.
Are you gonna get updated estimates on items that you brought up that were last year's numbers?
Yes.
You're talking
For
about,
the fixing of the building.
you're talking proposal? I can do that and I can have that out to you next week.
I think so, yeah.
Maybe
That
the
would
next,
be- that would help, yeah.
I can have it to you the next 10 days.
Yeah, we need to go over, and I would like another including the, I know we said it was ridiculous, but the generator.
I will get them to give you
I
a
need
bid
it. I want it.
on the piping.
I want to break out, I don't want to, yeah, I want to break out of, that may be something that we need to even put out for an RFP on what it would cost to put in a transfer switch and just the hookup where we could hook it, I mean, because we can't afford a generator right now, we can get a generator after a storm, but I would sure hate to be the one that blew the power for the entire area when we had it hooked up and then turn the power back on. You know what I mean? And the transfer switch would allow us to safely just hook up.
Okay.
Generator up.
I will,
Or just give me the assurances that if we had a generator come in, we could plug it in right away and run it. You know,
Terry, can you write down, please, 3 proposals plus generator proposal,
I wrote it.
10 days? Thank you.
I mean, that seems an awful lot for a generator.
It was,
I mean,
I remember when we got it, you were like, there's no freaking way.
It's for our house.
it's nowhere even near, I know commercial residential, but it's based on.
Yeah.
But it's.
The only thing I can do is what you interview of all the equipment. But still, it's not like the servers here.
Yeah, the draw.
That's not, the draw would be the.
But the electrical draw is not anything,
No,
like, when I look at the bill here and I look at the bill at my house. I mean, it's not that order of magnitude.
I just don't think that's, I think that's.
Yeah, I agree. Are there any questions that you have about the budget?
I don't have any.
There's no action required.
No action required. I would encourage you to review it. And if there is any questions, reach out to Mr. Sutter between now and then. We've got to approve it by June 10th.
Yeah, June 10th.
So I would pulling up the calendar, we can do that first week in June.
I will, if, don't rely on me, I will be in Dallas from the 4th through the 8th.
Okay. Pauline or Travis, so if you have anything major those weeks that,
For me, it has to be the before June 12th, because they're gone
okay,
3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Travis, I know you're super busy, but your schedule like on June.
That's fine, please.
Okay, so let's do, you wanna do June 6th?
6.
Okay,
at 2
June
p.m.
6th at 2 for the budget.
That's good.
Yep,
Make sure you have the other ones.
We, Mike, you have, Aaron sent an email out to the board for June 6th to see.
I am
if we can
in
get
Yes, Terry, you already got it, Christie?
full availability, because if we have to move, we can start now.
yes, exactly. Okay, Anything else? We covered it all.
2, 3, 4 weeks, we're gonna move up one still.
Okay.
Gonna do it in the half of-
All right.
Like the first week usually, but we need to move up again.
All right, then the time is 3:58 and our closed meetings adjourned. Okay, so I think we signed everything too.
I signed the one.
Oh,
Yes, but you got the letter that you signed right
Yeah,
here? Okay.
Karen has the letter,
Karen's got one. These are for next time.
it will go out to the.
Other than that,
Entities. Oh, good, that's good. I'll have to use my